Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Today's today, August 24 special session of the Ann Arbor City Council. Would our clerk please call the reading of order and notice of call and special session?
Nothing. I have to.
Notice is hereby given that a special session of the City of Ann Arbor Council will be held electronically on Monday, August 24th, 2020 at 7 p.m. for the following purposes. A resolution consenting to the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency in response to COVID-19. An ordinance to add a temporary emergency ordinance, section 1327A, concerning face coverings and size of gatherings, and a resolution concerning the hiring of a city administrator.
Thank you. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner,
Here.
Councilmember Bannister,
Here.
Councilmember Griswold,
Here.
Councilmember Lum,
Here.
Councilmember Grand,
Here.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Here.
Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Eaton, Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Present.
Councilmember Rimlali.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do we have communications today from our city administrator?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. We have before us the agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Rimlali, seconded by Councilmember Griswold. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The agenda is approved. DC1, resolution consenting to the mayor's declaration of a local state of emergency in response to COVID-19. Moved by Councilmember Malawi, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion of DC1. I'd like to just touch upon this briefly. As folks know, at the outset of the COVID-19 crisis, we declared and ratified a state of emergency here in Ann Arbor in order to give the city the opportunity to take action with respect to the right-of-way and other locally particular actions. The need for a state of emergency, it turned out, was at that time largely obviated by the action taken by our governor and the federal action taken by the president. About a couple of weeks ago, in recognition of those two actions, we rescinded the local state of emergency. We did so not because the crisis had passed, but because the utility of the declaration appeared no longer to be, the declaration no longer appeared to be useful. However, I believe, and I hope council will concur, that such a declaration does indeed have utility because it does give us the opportunity to pass on an emergency and swift basis ordinances such as and resolutions such as DC2. Giving ordinances of immediate effect is one of the benefits of having an emergency declaration. So I believe it is active and vital. I guess the substance and the benefit and substance of DC2 would be a subject of DC2, but this is a necessary condition to move forward with that particular ordinance. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved. DC2, an ordinance to add a temporary emergency ordinance, section 1327A, face coverings and gathering size of Title 1 of Chapter 15, Emergency and Disaster Management of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Councilmember Rimlali. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I comment, I would like to move an amendment. Mr. Gerhardt, if you could send that out to council, please. It's to amend section 8 to consistent with Governor Whitmer's executive order. And this section 8 amendment would add an exception to restrictions on gatherings to include schools, childcare organizations, and community centers. Again, that would make this consistent with the governor's executive order.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Lowy. Is it friendly to the body? Friendly to the body. Councilmember Lemon, still the floor.
Okay, thank you. Also, thank you to Councilmember Ramlawi and to City Attorney Kristen Larkham in the Attorney's Office. We've gone back and forth on this one a few times, and I'm pleased to see that we seem to have reached the point where we can act. What this does is to adopt a temporary emergency ordinance in Ann Arbor related to face masks and the permissible size of indoor and outdoor gatherings. The ordinance mirrors Governor Whitmer's executive order on face covering, and the ordinance mirrors the recent Washtenaw County Public Health order limiting the size of outdoor gatherings to 25 and limiting indoor gatherings to 10. Although the governor's executive order and the county's public health order are both in effect, we thought it was still important to clarify exactly what the rules are in Ann Arbor. As the co-owner of a local property management company, who also happens to be the legislative chair of the Washtenaw Area Apartment Owners Association, Mr. Chris Heaton indicated to us in an email, quote, "People must not be wandering around the city wondering what rules apply." And I would note that they house hundreds and hundreds of University of Michigan students. I believe he's right, and that this ordinance proposal is all about providing that clarity. It's not inventing a new set of rules. It's making sure everyone in Ann Arbor, including the thousands of U of M students arriving from all over the globe, is aware of the city's requirements and expectations. And as the university indicated to us in their presentation on their plans and proposals to educate their students and their rules for conduct on campus, it's important that the university and city approaches as a collaborative effort with joint accountability. And I believe adopting this ordinance helps facilitate that. Violation of the ordinance is a civil infraction with a fine from $100 to $250. If adopted, the temporary ordinance would expire when the governor's state of emergency is terminated. Thanks again to City Attorney Larkham for her assistance in pulling this together, and we hope Council will agree that providing clarity is important and will join us in supporting this tonight. I also appreciate Councilmember Ramlawi's and the Mayor's co-sponsorship and support. So thank you for your consideration.
Councilmember Hayner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question about the expiration in section 10. Well, I had two questions. Section I exempts a face mask at the polling place, and I assume that's to be in line with the state mandate on that? Or is there a special reason that we exempt from polling places in that list of exempted places? I just would put that out there for anybody to answer.
I
And,
can answer that.
Yeah, thanks.
This is consistent with the governor's executive order on polling
Those
places
exemptions are all part of
and
that.
face masks.
Yeah, so when you go to section 10, the expiration of the ordinance, it says that it expires when the governor's declaration declares that has been terminated. And so that's our sunset on this, is when the governor says it's no longer necessary. But given, Mr. Mayor, having you have the emergency powers was so that section 3 it comes into effect immediately upon the passing of this resolution. Is that correct? But it expires on the governor's word. Am I reading that correctly?
I believe that's true, but I'll defer to council.
Yes, that is our intent here, Jeff, Councilmember
Okay.
Hayner, that we needed a declaration issued by the mayor today so that this could take effect immediately. But we're trying to mirror the state executive order and the county's order as well. And then again, I appreciate Councilmember Lum explaining it all, but I'll have something more to say later.
I guess my question about that item would be then finally Mr. Mayor, would you be able to, if we felt if the governor said, hey, there's not a state of emergency, but we see local conditions that we would prefer to keep this in order, in effect, is that possible the way this is written now?
I again defer to council.
It seems not likely. And I wonder if we would be in a better position to act locally if we could say, well, the governor says there's no state emergency, but we feel it's still necessary.
Well,
Mr. Postma, Ms. Larkham, this is a question as to the authority of the office.
Yeah, that would be, I'd like Kristen Larkham to unmute because on that issue, I know we've looked at that. And so I noticed that she's in now.
I appreciate it because I know this kind of came fast, so we didn't really have the normal round of question and answers. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. Yes, I believe that the mayor's declaration is dependent on there being a governor's declaration. And once the governor's declaration expires, I don't believe that we can have this anymore.
There's no authority for us to declare, or through Mr. Mayor, to declare a local state of emergency outside of the states, is what you're saying.
At this point, I don't have that in front of me. That was my understanding.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, all of the governor's emergency orders are linked to her declaration of a state of emergency. I believe that that means that this would have to expire then.
Okay.
I will, I'll look at that some more.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to you having the authority, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that you have as much authority as is needed as our local conditions change.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you.
Ms. Garrett, can I have, Mr. Garrett, may I have, pardon me, for Councilmember, may I have the ability to lower hands as well? Thank you. Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you also for your leadership alongside Councilmember Lum on this issue. Your original media appearances indicated that this would be for the Downtown Development Authority District, our downtown district, but the language doesn't specify jurisdiction or boundaries. Should we assume that this is citywide?
The city ordinance.
Great.
Citywide.
I have no preference either way. Just want to make sure everyone's clear. So thank you.
Thank you. I also like to ensure that it's noted that Councilmember Ramlawi was front and center on this.
Oh,
Councilmember
sorry. Thank you, Councilmember Ramlawi as well, of course.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you for the acknowledgement, Mayor, and the opportunity to speak. And thanks to the Attorney's Office and helping with this. Ms. Slay and Larkham did a lot of the heavy lifting, as we all know, when it comes to these matters. But the intent and the purpose of this is I believe, clear. But to respond to Councilmember Hayner's questions on the sunset provision, I believe that the governor of the state of Michigan has demonstrated unequivocally the very responsible actions and she has taken since the declaration declared in March 13th for a state of emergency, and I feel comfortable using that as our north star in a lot of this. We want to be consistent. We want to have this level of government take action and address the situation. We have seen the state take it and the county take it, and now we are bringing this to council for council consideration to do our part locally. And as we know, the students have arrived, they're back, and it's a scary situation out there. The assurances that were given to us are not necessarily assurances, but the programs outlined by the University of Michigan, the educational tools, and the requests that they have made for the student body to behave in a responsible way, unfortunately, is not looking like it's going as planned. We are receiving many reports to the contrary, and students are back early. In fact, I think we should have maybe moved on this, but we were waiting for the county to move first so we can mirror them and have that as a part of the ordinance here in enforcement. And so Again, this is a civil infraction up there with, parking tickets and snow and like not removing your snow in the time that our ordinance asks and those kind of things. This is not a misdemeanor. We don't want it to be punishing and being punitive to the most vulnerable in our community, the homeless and the mentally ill and economically disadvantaged. This is to, again, address what is now upon us. And the city's population has grown dramatically, and it's grown in the part of the segment that poses the most significant challenge and risk to the rest of the community and world. So, I'll leave it at that for now, and I appreciate again the work that Councilmember Lum and the mayor's action on declaring a state of emergency here locally will allow us to enact this immediately. And if it's not listed on the agenda, but if I can be added as a co-sponsor to this to make sure that it is noted correctly, appreciate the opportunity.
Councilmember Griswold.
Just a minor issue. I think a couple of words may be missing. 3B states the child older than 5 years. And 4A, the person is younger than 5 years. So I think we're missing the 5-year-old. And I don't know which category they belong in.
Ms. Larkham.
She's muted.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay,
I was
great.
also checking on, sorry, I was checking on the question that Councilmember Haynes had asked. But first of all, let me look at this. Person older than 5 years. Yes, it should just be older than 5 years and younger than 18.
And then 4A has a person younger than 5. So the 5-year-old isn't covered in either category.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, okay, got to remember what was in I was given the one from State College,
okay.
and that is what was being requested. So let me just look real quick here. Parents, where face mask? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And I don't know if maybe this could just be changed later as just a minor edit to be
Yeah, it's
consistent.
suggesting
Yeah,
you
I
just
just wanted
strike
to
older
see.
than.
It's sort of a combination of what's in the governor's. Younger than 5 years old are exempt. So 5 years and older.
Oh,
it would
okay.
be applicable to. So the language should be older than 5 years, should be 5 years old and younger. The child needs to be 5 years old at least,
Right.
and younger than 18. And it applies then.
Oh, okay. So you're just going to strike out a couple of words there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I just know 5-year-olds carry a lot of germs.
Yes.
I have one in my house.
Well, right. And real quickly, if I can answer the question that Councilmember Hayner was asking, any ordinance, the City Code of Ordinances provides any ordinance or rule change under authority of this subsection shall be temporary, and upon the governor's declaration that a state of disaster or state of emergency is terminated, shall no longer be in effect. So it does automatically terminate when the governor declares that a state of a disaster, state of emergency is terminated.
Further discussion?
I just have a quick question, if I could. I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand.
All right, Councilmember.
To Kristen, we had a couple emails today asking about the K through 12, and that's now been addressed. Now we have also places of worship where people are outside of the building practicing safe distance. Are they required under this ordinance to wear masks if they are outside of the building of worship?
This ordinance doesn't specifically address that. However, if they are at their place of worship, they are exempt. And also, if they're in a private building, a building that's not open to the public, because the mask requirement only applies to public places indoors, or if they're outdoors, they just have to be at least 6 feet away from persons of a different household.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? I'm pleased that this is moving forward. I think, as we all understand, the method to slow the spread of the virus is very clear, and it depends upon 1,000 individual actions, all aggregating to effective public health. The direction that has been established for us by the leadership of the governor and the leadership of the health officer here in Washtenaw County is very clear. When you're outside, wear your mask. When you're inside, wear your mask. Do not aggregate in groups outside of over 25. Do not aggregate in groups inside of over 10. Observe rigorous hand hygiene, bundling all these activities together, each of us doing our part. Whether you're a resident who has come to Ann Arbor for the first time today, or whether you were born here decades ago and are now enjoying the pleasures of Glacier Hills, all of us have a crucial role to play in maintaining our own personal health and the personal health of the community. And I'm pleased and proud that Council is taking this step forward for our own part to ratify and support the excellent work done by our county health officer and our governor. Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you. And I know we've spoke about this quite a bit, and we did talk about it with the university's leadership. And I just want to reiterate that what was missing prior to this was enforcement. And I think it's important that we call upon the folks who are in charge of enforcement, in addition to their efforts in educating, be active and be active and consistent in enforcement. I think it's really important that we have a stick to go along with the carrot. Otherwise, without repercussions of breaking the social contract, you're going to have bigger problems than we already do. And I fear what will come in a few weeks if things continue to go the way they are right now. We will be shut down back in phase 2 within weeks if we don't get a handle on the situation currently. The new population that has just come into town is not showing the behavior and the restraint that we had hoped they would have. And I really hope that we take this and put it to work.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved. DC3, resolution to recommend city administrator search process next steps. Moved by,
I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry,
Tom had a question.
Mr. Crawford, I assume is just raised his hand to cut out, which is right is inappropriate. I'm going to assume that he has stepped out.
Did I'm Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
if I may, did I see Mr. Cox pop in and raise his hand? I wondered if he wanted to opine on our asking him to enforce a misdemeanor.
It's a civil infraction.
It's not a misdemeanor, it's a
Or a
civil
civil
infraction.
infraction, rather.
Well,
I'm sorry, I saw him come in and out, and I couldn't get back to the mute here. I know we've gone beyond it already, so I just.
I have no objection with a supplementary wisdom from Chief Cox.
Well, maybe so,
Chief Cox?
No, I was just going to say, we will definitely always try to be consistent. I think we have been. Very rarely can you enforce your way out of anything. As a matter of fact, I don't know if that's the case with very few things in this world. So we will continue to try to educate, and we will certainly enforce it, appropriately. So that's all. I just wanted to let people feel assured that we hear you. But the realistic thing is that enforcement is usually never the total solution. So, but we will be consistent.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I don't think we had a motion and second. So resolution to recommend the city administrator search process next step. Moved and seconded. Moved by Councilmember Lum, seconded by Council Member. Honestly, seconded by Council Member Grand. Thank you. Discussion, please, of DC3. Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just tee this up because as we know, it needs to be amended with further guidance. As established in our search process, today is the target day for City Council to identify next steps regarding the appointment of a permanent city administrator. Before jumping to that, however, I'd like to quickly review the process and thank Amy Sells for her excellent leadership throughout. In late June, Council voted to engage Amy as our search consultant. The position was posted July 1st through July 26th, and more than 250 resumes were received. On August 5th, Ms. Sell provided Council with a pool of candidates, and on August 10th, Council selected the 4 finalists. On August 20th, 3 interviews of the finalists were conducted with City Council, with city staff, and with community members. Also on the 20th, an open public survey was begun, and this is a public feedback opportunity that we have not provided previously on prior searches. We thank each of the 4 finalists for their interest in the position and for taking the time to meet with the 3 groups. As I mentioned, August 24th was identified by Council as the target date for City Council to determine next steps, whether it was to begin negotiations with one candidate, conduct additional interviews with finalists, or start the search process over. With this process background in mind, I think the case, I'm going to be brief, to appoint Mr. Crawford, I find to be a compelling one, and I would be comfortable voting for him tonight. Just quickly, I'll make my statement about why I think the case is compelling to appoint Mr. Crawford. Mr. Crawford has demonstrated his effectiveness in doing the job 3 times. Mr. Crawford has very broad appeal in all 3 groups, council, staff, and the community. And of the 3 groups of interviewers, there's a total of 36 ratings, 10 by council members, 12 staff, and 14 community members. And of that 36 total, 19 or 53% strongly recommended Tom, 9 more or 25% recommended Tom. So overall, there's 78% support for appointing Mr. Crawford, and just 4 of the 36 interviewers, or 11%, do not recommend Tom. That's really broad appeal, especially for someone who's been around for 15 years. Council members universally have positive views on Mr. Crawford and rate him highly. Not one council member indicated they do not recommend Mr. Crawford, and I think that speaks volumes to Mr. Crawford's ability to stay above the political fray, to manage politics, and to treat everyone with respect. Of the attribute ratings given by council members, 70 in total, that's 10 responses on 7 attributes, 50 or 71% are exceeds expectations, 18 or 26% are meets expectations, and 1 rating was no opinion. 1 rating does not meet expectations. When 97% of attribute ratings are meet or exceed requirements and 3/4 of those are exceeds, that defines an incredibly strong candidate. In other words, Mr. Crawford is way more than the safe choice. He has the skills and has already done the job effectively 3 times. Mr. Crawford's financial acumen, calm demeanor, breadth of experience, and knowledge of city government is especially needed now, with COVID financial challenges, embarking on major initiatives like AG0 and affordable housing. However, some have argued that in addition to Mr. Crawford, there was another candidate, Ms. Pavlicek, worthy of further consideration. And for that reason, we should take a couple of weeks to invite both back for additional interviews in some form. And I think that's a reasonable request. I'd be comfortable with that too. Although I would like to reiterate, as I said at the onset, that I am ready to support appointing Mr. Crawford. I think our community would be, I know our community would be in his expert, professional, good hands, were we to select him as the next city administrator. Thank you.
For my part, thank you, Councilmember. I would like very much to thank all the candidates who came and spoke to us, and came and spoke to us, came and spoke to staff, and of course to the public panel. I think that we're grateful and better for their having applied. We're grateful and better for having listened. I think that looking through the tallies of the responses, looking through the tallies of the data that we've received, I think that, and I think this is confirmed by the recommendation from our human resources professional that we've retained, that the 2 candidates, Mr. Crawford and Ms. Pavlicek, warrant further inquiry. That is to say, warrant a further opportunity to come and speak to staff, speak to public on a broader and more, broader and a little bit, perhaps a little bit more of a free-flowing basis, or in whatever manner, whatever forum, Ms. Sell in her expertise, I guess, recommends to us. To affect that process, to affect the further inquiries of Mr. Crawford and Ms. Pavlicek, I have forwarded a proposed amendment to the resolution to council, and if someone would be so kind as to move it.
I will move that.
Moved by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Grand. We'll have that going forward as the locus of discussion. For members of the public who don't have the text in front of them, let me read. It would serve to replace the last resolve clause on D3 with the following. Resolved that the City Council requests a supplemental interview process, including additional staff and public interactions with candidates Tom Crawford and Kara Pavlicek, and requests recruiter Amy Sell to develop, with appropriate input from council members, and implement that process, giving the public and other interested persons sufficient time to communicate their response to City Council. Resolved that, subject to candidate availability, this interview process take place before September 8, 2020. Resolved that the City Council meet on September 14, 2020 at special session to vote on the candidates and or determine next steps. In my view, I think that reflects the consensus of certainly staff and public, and I think the thrust of the council as well. And I think it gives assurance to folks who want to have more engagement in the process. Finally, it does not dally. It moves us forward in an expeditious fashion, commensurate with the importance of the task. I've got Councilmember Smith, Griswold, and Nelson on the amendment. Councilmember Smith.
So ideally, I think all of us would have really liked to have a process that involves the community and allows everybody the opportunity to get behind the selected candidate so that that individual is set up for success moving forward. Now, the process so far that we've ended up with is, as Councilmember Lum noted, we've had feedback from about 87 individuals, 59 members of the general public. And those 59 people had about 4 hours after they watched our session last Thursday night to fill out the questionnaire. By comparison, the process to select our police chief and our community area service administrator had extensive opportunity from residents of all walks of life to ask questions and to weigh in with their opinions about each of the candidates. I think certainly I believe that we need to provide the community the opportunity to meet with and vet these candidates. As I stated in my opening, I was hoping our process would lead to a unanimous vote for the next administrator so that they're positioned for success, and I will say that I concur with the recommendation from Ms. Sell that bringing back the top scorers for an additional presentation on their visions for the organization, for the city, and a presentation that allows for robust questions and interaction with the community. And when I say community, I mean community in the broadest sense and the widest sense possible. So that's why I'm supporting this amendment. I think that this is the most important position in the city. We have not been at this in depth for months and months, and I think giving it another couple of weeks and giving the community an opportunity to weigh in on this in a more purposeful way, I think would benefit all of us. Thank you.
Councilmember Griswold.
At this point, I just want to talk about the process. A process whereby we approved a detailed outline of moving forward. Today, 1 hour before the meeting, we received an email from our mayor, 1 hour. During the meeting, we are receiving emails from our city attorney. It's against policy to even be reading emails during a meeting. We had a very divisive primary. There are many who have said that honesty was not the strong suit of some of our leaders. I have no confidence in this leadership that we will be united. We were not united in this process, and an email an hour before the meeting does nothing to unite. And I am very, very disappointed in how we are moving forward or moving backwards. And I'll save the rest of my comments for later. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I appreciate the comparison to the search for the police chief, because actually that position is very, very different. It makes sense that hiring a new police chief demanded significant public input, because the job of leading our police department has everything to do with public engagement and daily individual interactions with members of the public. In contrast, the city administrator works and collaborates primarily with city staff and city council. Community leaders and heads of other local institutions will partner with our city administrator, but most members of the public would never have reason to work directly with our city administrator. In the months leading up to this hiring, we did collect a significant amount of data, input from staff about our internal work environments. For the interview process this week, special status was granted to the winners of the recent August primary elections. A panel of community members that is typically reserved for external stakeholders, leaders from local organizations and institutions outside of City Hall, was expanded to include 5 future members of City Council. This was unprecedented. Unfortunately, their response to being included in this way was to politicize this decision and promote the idea that this process is rushed. I appreciate that these few months between August primaries and November general elections are awkward. I remember this from 2018. In the final few weeks before new members were seated in 2018, council meetings ran very long and very late in order to finalize the ordinance for our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. I still believe that City Council did not empower that commission as much as it could have during that original ordinance process. But it was not up to me, and it never occurred to me to suggest that they postpone their decision-making by 1 month to include me. Our system of local partisan elections means that the winners of primaries are not seated until months later. This is the system established in our city charter. I have gotten a couple of emails today that actually suggested this decision be postponed until November. I'm relieved that it was only a couple but I don't think any resident of Ann Arbor, our educated city, should be comfortable pitching these same arguments that Mitch McConnell did in 2016 regarding Merrick Garland. The stability of our democracy actually does depend on basic understanding of and respect for when political terms begin and end. The decision before us should not be contentious. We received a significant amount of information about all 4 of the candidates, one of whom is a respected member of our local community. We should all be disturbed that in the interests of sowing local divisions, a small number of people are adopting the reasoning of our most undemocratic national leaders. I'm afraid that this is the beginning of a slippery slope, and it is ugly. And I'm ready to make a decision tonight. I do not want to postpone this decision. We have enough information before us. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's interesting what Councilman Nelson just said. It's true when you think about it. Like, I received an email today too, where it's basically saying that 3 of us sitting here shouldn't even have a word to say about it, and that they're presumptive, in only as much as they're going to appear alone on the ballot in November, folks should have more of a say, which is not only an unusual twist of logic, as Councilman Nelson pointed out, but really a charter busting effort to expand the power of people who haven't even raised their hand in front of the clerk and been sworn in yet. So these folks who aren't even council members elect have the same weight in the process as any other member of our community does, in my opinion. But setting that aside for a moment, I have a concern with this because if the concern is that we haven't had enough public input into this matter, which is what I'm hearing folks say, how have we determined that we're only going to move forward with 2 candidates? We had 4 candidates just last week and not enough input on those 4. So where did it go from 250 to 150 to 4 to 2? This isn't a game show. You know, there were 4 last week, and I'd like, if we're going to extend this courtesy of expanding public input, I would extend the courtesy of expanding public input to all 4 candidates. So that's how I feel about that. I wonder how the process will work in this Zoom time. It was nice to have in the police chief selection where we were able to go meet them and people could come down to City Hall and they went out in the community and so on. And that was times were much more amenable to that kind of community outreach and behavior. So I'm not sure I agree with this notion. I'm going to read it again and think it over. But thank you for letting me speak.
Councilmember Romali.
Thank you, Mayor. I share a lot of the concerns that my colleagues have spoke about regarding this amendment. To Councilmember Hayner's point, the fact that we're only selecting 2 and not all 4 is very troubling. If we're saying that there's not enough community input in this, then all 4 should be looked at, not just 2. It is inconsistent and incomplete. I cannot support it if it does not bring all 4 into the fold for the discussion. I think, again, to Councilwoman Griswold, bringing this an hour before the vote gives me heartburn. You know, I work my other job 60 hours a week. And some of us have other jobs and other commitments and family. And you know, I just find it troubling that it's been all too common that these kind of things come in very last minute. Again, we are cherry picking 2 out of the 4. We are changing the process in after it has begun and agreed and acted on. This roadmap to get to a decision was put forth a month ago, and there wasn't any objection to the concerns that are being raised now. I did not receive any emails from people until after Thursday, and that to me isn't what I would pitch my wagon to. Changing the rules after the process has been agreed on, acted on, and then hey, there is nothing that has changed so much that should justify us to do that. There really hasn't been anything significant enough to suggest that we should change it. And I would refute the assessment. The mayor has suggested that there are many in our community, and there's a consensus and there's a thrust to bring this forth. I don't hear it. I don't see it. There's a few folks in the community that put out a message to get some folks to email us that responded to it. But this is not coming from organic concern. This is another kind of orchestrated campaign. And it's not the organic concerns that I get on many other issues. It is this council who has the charter powers to take on these decisions. This is not a community engagement, involvement to the extent that we had with the police chief. Again, going back to how Councilwoman Nelson had explained it, that position is far different than our city administrator. And I think making the comparison of that selection process to this is comparing apples to oranges. And again, it does not meet my level of what I would consider it would take to change the rules of the game once they've been established. And I appreciate Councilmember Smith's sentiments that we want to get behind whoever we choose and make sure they have the support of the community and the support of council to take on the extreme challenges that we have. And I unfortunately see this as a detriment to that intent and to that sentiment. I think this is actually detrimental to getting the support wide and deep behind somebody to lead our organization and our city. And I am troubled that of what is happening, especially when it just includes only 2 and not 4. That to me is just, I can't go along with something like that.
Has Councilor Ackerman, Grant, Smith, and Hayner. For my part, I would entertain, I would view as friendly, amending the amendment so as to
I was going to do
include
that right now.
all 4 candidates. Got Councilmember Ackerman in the queue.
You were going to beat me to
Yeah,
it.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Gerhart, would you mind circulating amendment language? Thank you. I would move an amendment to the amendment that strikes the phrase Tom Crawford Havlicek and inserts all 4 before the word candidates.
Is that seconded by? Is that friendly to the body?
No.
All right, so we're on the amendment to the amendment.
So I'll
Got, hold on, I've got to take
Did it have a second?
It did. Grant.
Mr. Gerhart, could you also circulate the actual amendment that we're speaking about? That came from the mayor earlier. Do you have that for circulation?
I do not have that.
We've got one moment.
I'll forward it to you.
Thank you. We've got I'll hold the queue on Ackerman, Grand, Hayner, and new queue. So I'm pulling you off. Amendment on the amendment. I've got Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the sentiment, but I do not support this amendment to bring all four back because there was a clearer, very clear, if you look at all the feedback from all the groups and the survey data, there was a very clear separation among the four finalists. And in fact, it was really bifurcated. The staff ratings, everyone's ratings, the community ratings, there was a clear separation. And there were, I appreciate that these four candidates participated, expressed interest to the extent that they did, applied, participated in the interviews, and but realistically, again, if you look at all of the feedback provided us, there was a significant separation between Mr. Crawford, Ms. Pavlicek, and the other two candidates. It was significant, and across all the groups and across the public assessment. Again, it was bifurcated, and so I think that given the feedback we've been provided, it would not be appropriate to bring back all four. The clear set, there is just a real clear separation in the data, and so that's why I would not be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to colleagues for entertaining this. I think inviting more public input for this position makes a lot of sense. We've heard comparisons to the police chief, and the police chief being a position that requires more public engagement, and so it's important that that the broader community have more direct input into that individual's hiring. But the police chief reports to the city administrator, and so do all the other senior staff who oversee our infrastructure and our basic services, our fire safety, our parks, our planning and real estate services. These are all critical functions to whom the city administrator oversees, and the community cares about those issues. I think, I don't think that this should wait till a new council is seated. I'm sitting here right now. I won't be in November. I think my lens of 5 years at the city council table will provide some valuable input, as will the 10 other people sitting here. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think asking for 3 more weeks to get the community involved to a higher degree while we're in the midst of a global pandemic seems very reasonable. I think I look back to our last process that included more panels and meet and greets with each of the potential hires for city administrator. And I would love to have more of that direct opportunity for people to meet these candidates, questions that they care about, and give more direct feedback. I can draw on my own experience. I'm a hiring manager at my day job. I manage a team of 4, hired 2 of them directly. And while, I do the interviews and my assessment is really, really important, the owners and partners of our firm always interview candidates because their input of what the vision for the company is really matters, and how that person will contribute to the broader organization really matters. Well, we all have 120,000 bosses. We all have 120,000 collective owners of this community who deserve also their opportunity to interact with these candidates and provide more direct input. So, I think Councilmember Nelson raised that this is a slippery slope to get us to November. I don't see it that way. I don't want it to be that way. But I think we got 4 highly competent professionals who deserve to meet the community, and the community deserves to meet them. And I love working with Mr. Crawford. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Mr. Crawford will shine through this process without a doubt. He's a neighbor and been a public servant to these stakeholders for a long time. And I think there's great opportunity for him. But I also want to give that same opportunity to the 3 other candidates as well.
Councilmember Lum, did I have you on the queue a second time?
Yeah, I don't know if they'll qualify for a second time or not.
You do. We're on the amendment.
Well, I did speak. Okay, thanks. I did speak to why I'm not supporting this, because the data, all the feedback that we provided was there was a clear separation between amongst the 4. And I also just want to point out that with the prior city administrator search, we had 1 meet and greet. And then we had these comment cards that people could fill out at the meet and greet. As often happens, not a lot of folks showed up, but we did have 1 meet. It's obviously pre-COVID meet and greet. We did not do a public survey. And I think that's pretty significant that we've done that this time around. And I have participated in a few city administrator searches, and this is the first time we've utilized that instrument. And I think that's not insignificant. And as you know, we've been getting lots and lots of emails from people since we completed our interviews and submitted our evaluations, and directionally where that input has been guiding us. It's been pretty overwhelming, in fact. So I also think that just in general, we've had a good process, and it's identified highly qualified candidates, and as Councilmember Griswold noted, the process followed what we had all, agreed to and recommended. And again, this time around, we included an additional opportunity for public feedback with the survey. But I think, again, just if we are to bring back the candidates, I think it's clear from all of the data that we have, and we've just provided a lot of data and feedback, that there are 2 that stand out from the crowd. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. We got another reminder over email, but it was on the tip of my tongue. So thank you. Part of this process, one of our options, and it was a clear option, and it was the option that Ms. Sell recommended, was to bring back multiple finalists for additional information. Even I remember at Ms. Pavlicek's interview, for example, she even alluded to the fact that she hoped to continue with the process, meaning to me that it was her understanding that this was just because it was only a 45-minute interview, that she was hoping to come back to share additional information and to interact further with the community. So to pretend that this process was always going to be just vote on one, I think we've heard some other theories about why someone might believe that that's the case. This is a 45-minute interview left me wanting to really know from each of those candidates what their vision for our city was. And I just don't think we could ascertain what that is from a 45-minute interview. And we heard that across all 3 panels. It wasn't just me or a couple other council members asking for that. We heard that from staff, and we heard that from members of the community. panel, and we heard it from residents. So I don't understand what the harm is. To me, if it's 2, if it's 4, they can, any of those 4 can decide to come back and participate in the process or not. That's totally up to them. So I'm totally comfortable extending invitations to 4, and they can decide whether or not they want to participate. But, you know, to not understand during this critical time what someone's vision is for the city, I think does a disservice to our residents. And to not have all of us united behind a candidate, knowing, and I'm not saying it isn't this group's job to make this decision, but knowing that a future council that's going to have a lot of turnover is going to be determining if that city administrator stays on, and to not get some further input just seems foolish to me.
Councilmember Hayner.
I was going to ask Ms. Sell if she had any input on this whole matter. I support the notion of inviting all 4. I understand, based on the results that we've collected so far, that 2 candidates seem to have fared better in this initial part of the process. But I guess I support the notion of inviting all 4 if we think so. I think the public feels like their concerns will be assuaged by having more outreach. My decision making is going to be, my decision making would benefit from knowing if it's allowed for me to, either by way of the recruiter or our acting HR director or somebody else, to have my own conversations with these candidates outside of a public process. Can I send them an email? Here's some questions I have. I know what's lawful and not lawful. So I'd like to ask our recruiter or perhaps our attorney if that's what I can do, because that's what's going to inform me, not being filtered through the lens of the public, because I've had plenty of public input already. I've had people who are in leadership positions, neighborhood leadership positions, and so on, city leader types, I would say they don't care one way or the other. They just want somebody who's competent. The charter says somebody who has administrative and management and fiduciary responsibility. Well, we have that now, of course, and the good thing that no matter what happens with this search is that we have Mr. Crawford acting now as acting administrator, and if the offer ends up going to somebody else, we are certainly in good hands with him back in our finances department. I've always looked up to him and admired him for his acumen there. So I think we're in a winning situation here. I just wondered if you had any input about how would individual council members go about learning more than what we've learned already from this filtered input.
Ms. Sell?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my goal in this process is to make sure that you all as council, as the decision makers, have the information you need to feel comfortable with the decision. With a meet and greet that I've laid out, and I would want to confirm with council that it would be appropriate, having one-on-one conversations with council and community members and staff is a beneficial way to get comfortable with the candidate, as well as adding additional questions and raising issues in a broad forum are 2 areas where I think you could get additional information specific to the candidate's input. For those one-on-one conversations, I would want to run by council to make sure that they don't need to be taped or broadcast, because I think there is an interview component that I would want to be careful about. But in the past, I've done meet and greets where council members could ask candidates individual questions one-on-one to make sure that they got comfortable with that eventual critical decision.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner, are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ronlawi.
Thank you. Appreciate all the thoughts and conversation that we're having here. I do question whether we look how much we rely on the vision of our city and our community to come from the city administrator. That, I believe, lies more with the elected officials. That's why there are elections every 2 years so that we have a fresh look at what the community desires, where the community wants to go. That's why there are elections. That's why we have these positions. If it was just to come from our city administrator, we could eliminate a lot of these positions right here and just have one person do it. To me, I don't really put a whole lot of value in that. I want someone who can execute the consensus of council, you know, and the vision comes from council, and council comes from the people. And, you know, we were elected to lead. We understand, hopefully, all the different challenges and the complexities that come with the job by now. Everyone's been here for at least 2 years now, or going on 2 years. And, you know, I just think that we can make this decision. We've made actually just as difficult decisions before. And the whole public engagement process, I appreciate that, but I don't know if that's, you know, if there was nothing glaring like red stop signs and red flags, it hasn't come forth. You know, I don't see any red flags right now with going forward. We were elected to lead. We need leadership. We need stability. And currently we're in flux right now. And I don't think that's good for the staff. I don't think that's good for the community. I don't think that's good for the organization. And to sit there and string this out for some input that frankly has a place, but is not the driving factor in making this decision. It's one of many, but it's not a significant part of that. It takes, you know, as we know, only 6 council members to dismiss a city attorney or a city administrator. We have a lot of influence and power when it comes to that, and that it needs to be respected, and it needs to be, we need to be responsible with it. And we need to, I think, make a decision. And again, just pushing back, the vision comes from council. And I think that's perhaps one of the problems we've had in the past, that the voice of the people were not reflected with the elected officials that were on the council. And so all we need is somebody who can follow the consensus of council.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to remember there's a difference between the vision for the community and the lowercase c city and a vision for the capital C city or City Hall. You know, this is a very complex organization, 750 employees, an operating budget of almost $500 million, responsible for over $1 billion in assets. We're not hiring a project manager who's gonna work 80 hours a week and, you know, burn the candle at both ends and get us a carbon net zero strategic plan in 2 weeks. We're not hiring someone who's gonna go out with a hammer and a nail and fix the dam. We're hiring someone who's gonna be a conductor of a very large orchestra and should have a vision for how that organization can operate in a better way. It means having a vision for how we tear down silos, so departments not talking to each other and coordinating projects. That means that we need to have a vision for how to better improve municipal customer service so that when people submit an issue through A2Fixit or come to our customer service desk whenever that's open again in the future, they're assured that their problem is going to be resolved and that communication is going to be open and transparent with them along the way. right? These are elements of an organizational vision, a vision for the system, a vision for City Hall, that I think we would all welcome, because we can say that we want better customer service. We can say that we want a plan to fix our 60-year-old park infrastructure, but we need someone who's going to get that done and coordinate the dozens and hundreds of employees who are going to actually execute it. And that's the vision that we want. And I think Mr. Crawford, after 14 years and corporate experience and an MBA, and obviously significant beneficial data after our initial interview process, has a lot of that. And now we just need to let the community know, not only as a means for us to get more data, because we have to make a really important decision, but also as a means to invite the public into, what does it really mean to run a municipal government? What does it really mean when you vote on millages and millage renewals? When you see a dump truck with the City of Ann Arbor seal drive by, what does that truly mean? And who is going to be the next leader who makes sure that all those services are improved? So yeah, I think that vision is still an important part, but I agree that the vision for the community has to come from the elected officials.
Thank you. Councilmember Bannister, I don't know whether you pulled your hand down or whether I did by accident, but I think you are, I thought you were on the queue next, but then you're not there anymore. Was that my doing by accident?
I think that was an accident. I would like to comment.
Thank you. You're on the, you have the floor.
I'm up. Okay. Well, as soon as we're done with this amendment discussion, I would like to express my strong support for Tom Crawford after working with him closely for 3 years. But on the amendment, one of the things that hasn't been fully mentioned, or I'd like to say again, is that I feel that it is urgent that we wrap up this process tonight. And that's why I am not supporting an amendment to defer further for additional data. We're having, you know, as we all know, a COVID-19 crisis, and we need to move on quickly and address our bigger issues. And we also need to hire an HR director as soon as possible. That's been a gaping problem, and we need to, that is a more urgent problem than gathering even further data. We have done, I am confident that council has done our due diligence. This has been a good process. We have become familiar with the candidates, and this is council's responsibility. The city administrator is one of 2 employees that report directly to us that we select. And again, I will be supporting Tom Crawford, and I feel that I urge my colleagues that we wrap this up tonight and get back to or onto a much more urgent matters facing the city. Thank you.
Got Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to echo some of Councilmember Romlawi's points in terms of the meaning of this input. I've had a number of conversations the last few days with community leaders who, I guess Councilmember Hayner mentioned this as well, community leaders who have had direct experience over the course of years with past city administrators and have been very interested in understanding how this decision would move forward. And it is relative to the whole population of our city, it is a relatively small number of people who truly understand how this role functions, how this role interfaces with council, and the obligation to reflect the consensus of council. And when I hear the discussion around vision and having one-on-one conversations, frankly, I don't need to have a one-on-one conversation with any of the candidates. Many members of the public are not aware, most members of the public are not aware of the huge amount of information that we were provided about these candidates. And in the discussions that I've had with community leaders who have a lot of skin in the game, who would look forward to direct work with our future city administrator, they've not raised concerns to me about a lack of information going in. And to me, that is more significant than anything else. The concerns that I have heard are a repetition of past mistakes, of political people who are not recognizing the difference between the individual relationships with council members versus the responsibility to reflect the consensus of the whole body. And that's where I'm seeing lots of red flags when we're talking about, you know, the needing to understand the individual vision of the person and having individual one-on-ones. There's a huge amount of information, even publicly available, about these candidates. And I have yet to receive an email from someone complaining about the flimsiness of this process, who was even offered, you know, like, I read this article about this candidate. You can even Google these candidates and learn quite a lot about them. And I guess the other point that I would make is, for every email that I got complaining about this process being too short, I don't know that I got an email. I think for every 4 emails I got complaining about the process being too short, I got one email from somebody who actually did a little bit of research and said, you know, I urge you to support this candidate. You know, I'm your representative. Councilmember Ramawi is your representative. We are your representatives in making this vote. You don't have to participate in a poll. You don't have to do public input on a survey. You can actually express your opinions to us instead of suggesting that the whole process be turned upside down. Again, I guess I know that I'm going to be accused of insulting the public or dismissing the public, but there is a relatively small number of people in our town who are going to have a lot of skin in the game in terms of who we choose. The average person on the street does not have a lot of skin in the game in terms of who we choose among this particular pool. We have 4 very excellent candidates. I've not heard anyone say that any one of these candidates would be absolutely terrible. There's not a huge risk of anything. I'm ready to move forward tonight, and I really am just tired of the games that we seem to be playing. Pretending that there's not enough information, pretending that public input is going to be decisive, pretending that, I just feel like there's a whole lot of pretending going on tonight. Thanks.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson, let me speak clearly then. There was not alignment in this data between staff and council and the community. And when we talk about who's going to lead this organization, and when I mean vision, I mean strategic plan. I mean, who's going to motivate staff to implement the policies that we as a council want to see them implement. Because if we don't have a strong leader at the top, if we don't have consensus and being behind that person, it doesn't matter what policies we try to get them to enact. They will fail. And when we don't hear strong consensus from our staff, but what we do hear is an ask from staff to bring people forward for more information so that they can help us make a more informed decision about who is going to lead them, who is going to motivate them. It is our responsibility as council members to listen to that feedback. It's not just from the community, it's also from the staff who run this organization. And I think it is critical to the success of whoever leads this organization as the administrator, that there is consensus at the council level. Because in a few months, we can sign a contract, you can push it forward tonight, you can refuse to listen to that and refuse to acknowledge that. Fine, we know there was a plan, we heard it. Right? And it was a big push, let's be honest. It was a big push to even get a search, because if some of you had your way, there never would have been one in the first place. So let's not play games, and let's be honest about this. A lot of you don't care what anyone thinks. You wanted to select your guy and move it forward. Now, I happen to really like that guy, and I think it does him a disservice to not go through with the process and get the information that we need so that everyone is behind the person to help move our city forward for the long term. That is what we're asking for. It's not playing games. I take this decision really seriously.
Can we?
Because I'm gonna be here. No, Jeff, you can deal with it, right? That's your language. So if you don't, if you know, some of us are still going to be here at this table and have to deal with it, right? Have to, and want to implement good policy and care about the future of our city, and think that we need a little more time to push these candidates to explain how they're going to be able to move our city forward in this really critical time. That's what we're asking for. But if you believe, just like you did in the past, that you can work outside of this system with more than 5 people and make decisions because you don't want to work to get the work done, fine.
Councilor Lum, I think you've spoken twice in this matter.
Yeah, can we speak to the motions before us? We're speaking to
I'm
2
100%
versus
speaking
4.
to the motion.
We're speaking to 2 versus 4. Are we not? The
Councilmember-
amendment to the amendment?
We're on the amendment to the amendment. I got
Okay.
Councilmember Lum, who has
Like some
spoken
guidance in
twice
that
on this
direction.
matter.
I just had a question. I have spoken twice. I have a question.
Let's roll. Yes.
Okay, it's for Ms. Sell. This has to do with comments that were made about one-on-one interviews between, I don't know, individuals, members of the community or council members. Is that what would be contemplated? And I'll just preface this by saying, so this may be a bit of more rhetorical, a bit of a softball question, but the city had a very bad experience with a previous city administrator search many years ago, where one candidate, there was one council member who had a one-on-one and no one else was present. And then unfortunate accusations were made about this one individual, but there was no way to verify that. There were these claims made, and it really sort of torpedoed the process in many ways. But I would, from that experience, I don't think it's in anyone's interest to have one-on-ones where there's no one watching, if you will. So I don't know. So my question to you is, what is the professional procedure for conducting those kinds of further interviews?
Thank you. Great question. The kind of proposal that I had suggested as a next step was to have a variety of elements to provide more information. One of those elements would be kind of a formal presentation where questions are provided in advance, as well as a few prompts, including kind of a vision for City Hall. Another element was kind of one-on-one meetings that would be COVID friendly. So in the past, when I've done community receptions, people could gather in small groups. There would be an opportunity in a public forum, a visible forum, where people could ask questions that might be a little bit more personal to one person, but to, again, give everyone that comfort. So my thought to make it COVID friendly, there would be kind of a queue, it would be by appointment, but it would be outside, maybe under a tent where, it would be visible, because we'd be monitoring it, but there wouldn't be anybody within 6 feet. So there would be some, you could the next person would be able to overhear the conversation. It's not meant to make it secretive, but it's meant to allow one-on-one interaction so that key people, staff, council, can ask additional questions in a session that to help them have more information. So it wouldn't be private and secretive. It would be public in the sense that other people could see it, but it would allow for some additional communication and interface. Another key component that I had identified was tours, because again, getting staff to be comfortable with the candidates, for candidates to become more familiar with municipal operations was another component. So staff in small groups would be able to provide tours to provide additional interaction. So that was what I had suggested, was a way to get everybody more familiar with each other in this additional role, if council feels that getting information would be beneficial to this process.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Yep, thank you. I'll be brief. I like the idea of having either small groups or one-on-one question answers. I responded as I didn't have enough information. I hire a lot of people in my day job, and I've never hired an important position based on a 45-minute interview. I just don't get, I think there's a lot more to learn from somebody's personality than what comes across in their resume or in a video. You know, you need to communicate with the person, and you need to get a feeling for who they are. And the forum that we had set up didn't give me that opportunity. But more importantly, and I appreciate that we've never done surveys on this process, but we had 59 people weigh in. You know, that's not very many people. That to me is such a minor incorporation of public sentiment that you know, I just can't get behind it. But I would suggest at this point, most of our minds are made up. Can we vote on this?
Further discussion? I guess on the question of two to four, I'm content moving forward with 4 if that's council's will. I would say, however, I'm going to push back on the question as to whether this is a revision of the process. This second step was specifically contemplated in the council resolution on August 10, in which we specifically said that at this meeting, after receiving feedback, we'll determine next steps, which may include negotiating with 1 finalist, inviting multiple finalists for additional interviews in September, or relaunching the search. There's absolutely nothing about this conversation which is changing the rules of the game, changing the process of the game midstream. This is entirely consistent. This is the road to unanimity. This is the road to consensus. And I'm just looking for my council, for my colleagues to recognize that and move forward on that basis. Councilmember Eaton.
Thank you. So I want to be clear, following up on the mayor's comments, is this amendment proposing that we open it up for public input, or is this an effort to bring it back just to council so that we can ask more questions? Because I'm unclear on that after what the mayor just said. Secondly, I don't believe that it's fair to the candidates if we bring all 4 back. I think that the previous steps have clearly separated 2 candidates from the other 2, and it would just be unfair to those other 2 candidates to include them in another wave of interviews or whatever the heck you have in mind here, if in fact it's unlikely that they're going to make the cut. So I'm going to vote against increasing it to 4, but I really would like a clearer idea of what it is that you're proposing, whether we are going to just open it up to the public to comment on this in ways that we didn't do the last time we did a city administrator search, or whether they're coming back so that we can ask more questions. Thank you.
Further discussion of the amendment to the amendment. I guess by way of response on the substance, I would be looking to Ms. Sell for direction with respect to the content and form of the second interview process. I would view it as important that there was additional staff engagement. I'd view it as important that there were additional public engagement. And, of course, there's nothing wrong with additional council engagement. I think it's an opportunity for candidates to see more of us, and for all of us here, staff members of City Hall and the public, to see more of them. Further discussion of the amendment. Pardon me, the amendment to the amendment. Mr. Garrett, whose point today?
Lawley?
Oh, did you say Ramlawi?
Yes.
Thank you, my apologies. Roll call vote on the amendment to the amendment, starting with Councilmember Ramlawi. And for clarity, what we're voting on is moving it from 2 persons to 4 persons. 2 persons to 4 persons.
Councilmember Ramlawi?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister?
No.
Councilmember Griswold?
No.
Councilmember Lum?
No.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton?
No.
Councilmember Nelson?
No.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
The amendment carries.
Further discussion of the amendment as amended? Councilmember Hayner, I see you had raised your hand. I had from back when on the queue, Councilmember Ackerman, Grand, then Hayner. I guess we've been at this long enough with everybody, with those two acquiescence. I'm just going to have a new queue. Is that all right?
That's fine.
Just briefly,
I'll go to the back of that.
if I could just briefly.
Councilmember Ackerman.
I moved the amendment from 2 to 4 based on feedback from this very group. So I would hope that we can move forward with a second phase that involves the public and draws out more distinct vision for City Hall from the candidates.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. I have another question for Ms. Sell. It's entirely possible, is it not, that when invitations are extended to these candidates, that all four may or may not choose to participate moving forward? I know we've opened it up to these four, but is it entirely possible in your experience that, as was mentioned by one of my council colleagues, that they might say, hey, I get it, I saw the data that's being released or whatever, and they might not come back?
That's definitely a possibility.
Okay. Well, I certainly don't have any. I mean, I think like I said before, it's decent to get feedback. I'm interested in how we're going to get that feedback. We have what, 745 staff members, something like that. 743 at last count. We got 12 responses. Is that correct? And so that's less than 0.02% I mean, how are we going to improve that staff feedback loop over these next 2 weeks, if that's what some of my colleagues have determined is critical? Do you have any recommendations for that, Ms. Sal?
I think small group discussions on the tour could be helpful. I was surprised by the low turnout rate, and I would like to see if I could figure out some way to increase that.
Okay, I think that's critical. That did have the lowest, I mean, obviously not really, 115,000 people in the city and 59 public responses. I know that's very low too. I'm not sure how we're going to increase it. And I agree that I'm not sure what was meant by the non-alignment in the data. If what you're saying, if what Councilman Graham was saying was that they were at different choices for different groups of people seem to had been made. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, they were all, except for the 10 out of 11, the other two were very low turnout. So I'm not sure if that's even beyond the statistical anomalies, in the survey. So there's nothing wrong with having more time. I'm not sure. I would, in my years of hiring and sadly sometimes firing people also, it is extraordinarily difficult not only to comb through the 250 some applications that Ms. Sell got, so we appreciate that, but I can't remember ever hiring somebody without sitting down with them for an hour at least and having my coworkers and colleagues and managers and other people in the corporation do the same. And so I certainly get where we're coming from with this. I appreciate the notion that we have a little more, and that little more has dates put on it, because as I'm comfortable with Mr. Crawford in his acting role as always, but I don't want to put this off forever, just like we've done with the HR director. I think that's next. It maybe should have been first. So that's my only comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Lum.
Just a quick comment to note that because comments are being made about the staff analysis, and there is also a significant difference between the ratings that were in the staff survey responses versus the interviewer ratings and responses. I find the interviewer ratings, more valuable, frankly, and I think that that's not an insignificant aspect to these ratings, and that is also, I find that very influential. And I think that it is, I agree with Councilmember Eaton that, and because there was such a bifurcation amongst the top two and the lower two, that it would be misleading to all four, but the decision's now been made to bring them all back. And so we did get quite a bit of feedback, and there was consistency in that bifurcated results from the surveys, the interviews, and the panel, all three panels. Thank you.
Councilmember Eaton.
Thank you. I was opposed to asking all four candidates back, but I think that the most important thing that we do is that we reach a unanimous agreement on who to hire. And so I'll be supporting this amendment to make sure that everybody here at council is comfortable with the process and feels fully informed. And the timeline that the mayor has offered is not so prolonged as to cause any harm to the organization. I think we owe it to whoever we hire that we unanimously support their hiring. And so I'll be voting in favor of this.
Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I've hired hundreds of people and fired probably just as many, maybe half as many. Goes with part of the job. I probably would reduce that number quite a bit. Less than 20%, I apologize. But trying to make a statement here that it's just, it's an ugly world when you're in management. It's a difficult position. It's a position that most people avoid, actually. They don't like to be in that chair. It is a very stressful chair and most often thankless. You don't get paid much more than your counterparts who don't have that extra responsibility. You do it for other reasons. And so anyhow, I think it's important, as Councilmember Eaton has said, that we have consensus here. And I was prepared to vote on selecting one person tonight. But I think in order to give that person the support that they need to do their job, it's good to have the consensus of all of council. And if this extra few weeks gives members of this body more comfort in making that decision, then I'm okay with that. To be honest, I do take in what staff has said, but that's only a part of my decision. My decision will not rest and lie with wholeheartedly on what staff says. It only is a part of what goes into the decision, but it's not going to be the driving force in what I feel is best for the community and what's best for the organization. But I think what is best for the organization and what is best for the community is to make sure that we have some harmony when it comes to selecting that person. And I think that's really important. And if waiting an additional 3 weeks will provide additional support and harmony to give that person the room to operate and the confidence and the comfort, then I can support it.
Councilmember Griswold.
In analyzing the data and looking at who was highly recommended, I think that one candidate stands out, but in the name of working with other people, I will support this resolution, but I ask two things. One is that we receive notification 48 hours in advance whenever possible. And secondly, that we look for discriminatory practices in what we're doing. I previously worked for a Fortune 100 company, had 44 employees in 2 states, and attended a 2-day executive education class on discriminatory practices. I believe that there was the risk of racial discrimination, ageism, as well as favoring people who were more comfortable with technology. And so while we may have had 2 people with high scores and 2 people that had lower scores, I think that if you consider the discriminatory practices that may have underlined some of our activities, especially given that much of it or most of it was done with Zoom, we need to face that. In the news today, Pioneer High School, an article about discrimination. It is everywhere, and we have to be able to recognize it and take the appropriate actions. Thank you.
Councilmember Lum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess first for Ms. Sell, just in terms of, as outlined in the mayor's amendment, and I also do appreciate that. I mean, I'm ready to make a recommendation tonight, but I also indicated that, you know, if some felt it was necessary to conduct some more interviews, I'm comfortable with that, but I also don't want it to be unclear about, you know, kind of where I land right now. But to provide for more public input, the amendment that you brought forward, Mr. Mayor, states that that this will all be subject to candidate availability before September 8th, and that council will then meet on September 14th. That's the next and presumably final step to vote on the candidates. You do say or determine next steps, but I think the intent here is to just add a few more weeks to the process, basically, and then to make a decision, if I'm understanding this outline that you provided us here. And I appreciate that you're framing it that way. For the public input piece, Ms. Sell, I think, you know, these evaluations, the interviews, I think were actually quite thorough. And we had the opportunity to take notes on the candidates' Q&A, and in these 7 areas that were ranked professionally by you as important skills for this job. And I think that those interviews are very, very informative and would be a good and helpful framework for folks, as opposed to, I don't know, one-on-ones that might not be a consistent sort of framework, because you also provided us sample interview questions, and I think you did that, correct me if I'm wrong, to be fair across the board. And some chose to ask those sample questions. I kind of, you know, worked within the attribute, but asked my own questions. Others did that as well. But I think what you were trying to do was make it fair and uniform. So here are these guidelines that you all need to follow. With a one-on-one framework, how can you ensure that that's what's going to happen? And, you know, that inappropriate questions, because we all know when you do interviews, there are things you do not ask. And the city could be very liable if people veer off the script, basically, and ask those kinds of questions. So there does need to be a process, a clear process and oversight, so this is done properly. So could you speak to that?
Sure. Those are all great points that I will endeavor to build in. One of the different dynamics is where it's a small group conversation or an individual conversation. The dynamics and implications are different than if it's on a panel interview that's being viewed by potentially hundreds of people. So that's where I think you can have slight differences with the different formats. But I can definitely make sure that or one of my staff people is present during the one-on-one conversations to make sure that something really isn't awkward. Again, the way I had it envisioned, that they're probably like the next person in line would be, so it wouldn't be a completely private one, but with social distancing, we need to spread people out a little bit and make sure that there's no more than an appropriate number of people on site at any time. So I've started to put a little bit of thought into some of the logistical issues to manage that. I've also thought about giving an opportunity for a broad range of consistent questions to be asked to all the panel, all of the finalists. That would be video recorded, because my guess is to make sure that we get everything done quickly. There might be candidates coming in on different days, and I wouldn't want to give anybody an unfair advantage by live broadcast of the questions, but I'd rather want to, my thought was to kind of videotape them, gather them up, and then at the same time simultaneously release them to the community, so that, again, a broad range of people can view them and provide feedback in more time than what was done before, because that was a piece of feedback. So the elements would be a kind of a presentation and panel discussion that would be videotaped and shared broadly. There would be staff tours and small groups of staff, and there would be, again, this kind of modified COVID-friendly meet and greet where people could ask questions in a forum that is conducive to one-on-one, taking into account the concerns that have been raised about inappropriate questions and making sure that there's some kind of assurance that everyone's best interests are protected.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bannister.
Thank you, Mary Taylor. Yes, I sense that this body is moving towards postponing and allowing for even a greater, huger amount of information in a quest for consensus. And I can go along with the majority on that. However, I sense in the comments tonight that we already have a consensus surrounding our 15-year loyal public servant, Tom Crawford, who has served as city administrator not once, but 3 times, trusted by 3 separate councils. So I feel that we have consensus, and I just want to underline some of what's already been said, possibly by Councilmember Lum and others, that if we proceed with postponing on a timeline here to vote on Monday, September 14, that is my intention, is to wrap this up on September 14. And I will just share that we've all received, and I've received emails, I have received personal conversations and phone calls from residents, and they are concerned that this is some kind of slippery slope where there may be members on council who are even seeking to have a less qualified city administrator so that it might be easier to further conflicts of interest or ulterior motives. And I strongly feel a fiduciary responsibility to serve and represent the citizens of Ann Arbor to make sure that that does not happen. And I'm sorry to be so frank and blunt, but that can be the backstory going on here. And I want to do everything. It needs to be said that that should not be happening. Thank you.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would encourage every single colleague to not play and give voice to absolutely ludicrous conspiracy theory. And I think that we need to do the hard work of speaking to these 4 incredible professionals who have given their time and energy to applying to this top job. They rightly deserve our attention. To say anything else, to deal in accusations of corruption is just going to further divide this process and not get us to consensus. So I'll just leave it there.
Councilmember Smith.
I'm going to echo exactly what Councilmember Ackerman said, I thought that was completely an inappropriate throwing out of a ridiculous conspiracy theory. I think the suggestion that any of us wants to hire somebody that's not the best applicant is ridiculous. I think it shows a complete lack of respect for your colleagues and the love that we have for the city that we work for. I think it is a perfect example of where the political dialogue is in the city, and it's disgusting to me. I cannot tell you how disappointed I am in that accusation, Councilmember Bannister. I would hope that you would retract that out of decency, but I don't expect it. I'm
Councilmember
done.
Griswold.
Member Bannister was raising a concern. I could raise similar concerns about death threats, about attacks on my computer system, my website, but I won't. What I want to ask, and this is appropriate with Amy Sells, I would like to have our city attorney prepare a short paper, or maybe there is something out there already to make us aware of discriminatory practices. It can be as simple as you interview someone and they're wearing the same shoes that you have. They go to the same religious facility. They belong to Kiwanis. There are so many things that connect us, and we have to make sure that when we're interviewing that we're not being influenced by that.
Councilmember Griswold, you've hired a recruiter, Amy Sell, who has walked through the process with you, who has provided instruction on questions, who had provided guidelines already on this that I've obviously viewed, but she's been doing this for a long time. The admin committee has met with her extensively about this, and I think that it's best for me to ask further issues at a subsequent time. But certainly, I can look at all those things. You know, I will talk to Amy Sells. She is the recruiter who's running this process. But certainly, I will talk to her. You can look at the materials she's already sent. I can always send supplemental materials. We are well versed in that. And so I can do this, but I'm only pointing out that this litany to show that she's really already done that at this point. But your concern about it, we can always address it further because the issues that you raise need to be addressed now.
Oh, okay, thank you. And Amy has been extremely professional and has really helped us with this process. Discrimination is just something that you need to address daily. And so anything that you can do to help us to keep an awareness of it, I would appreciate. But whatever you and Amy decide, it's fine.
Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, I'm gonna withhold my remarks and encourage us to vote on this amendment.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, like many of our discussions, it gets pretty heated, and this is no exception. And I just, you know, want to thank Amy and her assistance in this matter. Thanks for responding to my emails over the weekend within an hour each time, and guiding us through this process. Obviously, we need someone here to keep this from going off the rails. We're all passionate about our positions, and I hope that this exercise here ultimately leads us to the best outcome, and that's to get behind a new leader and give him the support, or her the support that they need to do the work that needs to be done. You know, and I will say that you know, many times, you know, I will know within the first 10 minutes whether I'm going to hire somebody or not. It generally doesn't take hours and hours to figure that out. I know I'm not hiring a busser here or a line cook, but many times you can make a decision in 45 minutes. It does not require much more than that when you're given the information we were given ahead of time. So anyhow, I appreciate everyone's cooperation in this matter. And again, it's really important that whoever gets the position has the support of this entire body.
Further discussion of the amendment? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Ramlawi.
Member Ramlali,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister,
Yes?
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
I think I'm going to take that as a yes from the
Sorry,
mute, Councilmember Smith.
My screen is freezing. Yes.
The
Thank you.
amendment carries.
Further discussion of the main motion? All in favor?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
click the button, my friends. Councilmember Hayner.
Yeah, I don't know why it is. I get 3 dots, and I invite and mute me are my primary buttons here, when all I really want is raise hand. So, Ms. Sal, just to get it cleared up here, under the terms of your contract for providing the service for us, are these additional services an additional cost, or are these covered under the terms of the contract?
These are covered. There's no additional cost.
Okay. And because you,
Well, I could, expenses, travel expenses for the candidates would be an additional cost, but there's no additional fee for my time and services.
so because of this notion of we may have them here to do walkthroughs, a water plant or whatever, or meet staff in different locations or something, that candidates who choose to join us from a distance, and there's a hand, I mean, none of them are super far away. So those expenses would be covered by the city somehow. Okay. How do we know if they accept our invitations? Just hang on the line and you'll let us know how it's going and if this passes?
Yep, I'm happy to give frequent updates over the next couple of days as we finalize the schedule and address all the issues that you all have thoughtfully raised in terms of the logistics.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I think Amy sort of answered the question. I would just want a schedule in as much detail as to what the process is, and really an explanation for the public as to the role of the city administrator as well. I just think that the public needs to understand what the city administrator does and who reports to them and et cetera. I think it's misleading for many. And I know many council members, myself included, when I first declared that I was running, did not understand the role of the city administrator. And so I really do think we need to educate the public as to the role of the city administrator as we solicit the feedback from the public in this process, so that we get the best feedback we can possibly get.
I'll work on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Ramlawi.
I have a procedural question. I apologize.
No worries, Councilmember.
This is DC3.
My apologies. Yes, this is DC3 as amended.
And so the resolve clause, there was a blank there, at least the copy that I'm looking at. I'm just wondering, what are we filling in?
Amendment.
That would be the amendment that you just approved, Councilmember Malawi. Yes.
Okay.
The amendment substitutes for the last resolved clause.
Right.
Thank you for that question. Does everyone understand what we're doing from this point going forward?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Ramlawi.
Councilmember Malali,
Yes.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Bannister,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Lum,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Ackerman,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Eaton,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
The motion carries.
We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please dial the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you have connected, please enter the meeting ID 950-3531-3122. That is 950-3531-3122. At that point, please enter *9, *9 in order to raise your hand to comment. You will be called upon by our city clerk. Our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number and let you know that it is your time to speak. When it is your time to speak, please turn off your other devices in your room, such as your television or your computer, so that there is no feedback. Also, please pay close attention to the time. The speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining. Clerk will also notify you when your 3 minutes are up. When your 3 minutes are up, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor to the next speaker. Is there anyone who would like to speak at public comment?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 callers.
Thank you. Please call upon them as you like.
Caller 936. Caller 936.
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You're live.
Okay. Well, this is Zachary's story. And first of all, I wanted to apologize to Councilmember Hayner. My last public comment, I misheard you, and I went back and listened to the video. If you went back and listened to it, I think you might see my error in that. It was very hard to hear. But nonetheless, I did not intend to spread any information or anything like that. Moving on to tonight, and first, I'd like to thank you all for extending the process, and I look forward to learning more about the candidates. I'm kind of disturbed by a few things I was hearing tonight from Councilmember Ramlawi, suggesting that emails are orchestrated by certain individuals about issues. But for an entire year, I've devoted a lot of my time to watching all of your meetings, sometimes until 3 a.m., staying long so I can give my public comment. And to be insulted like that is just improper, and I do not appreciate that. Councilmember Nelson, when you're, I'm accusing you of insulting the public right now. When you said most of the public does not understand or not aware of the intricacies of the city administrator, that's a failure on the city's part. We need to educate and participate in outreach to the city if residents are not aware enough of their own city government. And I think that's something as a democracy that we should be fostering. And Bannister suggesting or repeating a resident's comment to you about some council members wanting to hire someone who's less qualified so they're easier to push around. That, it's incredible for you to insinuate something like that, and to not right away say, hey, we all have our different political differences in the city, but to accuse that there's something
30 seconds.
nefarious like that going on from one of your colleagues is ridiculous. So I would like to see some outreach, if not now, into the future. I'll have to call another time and talk about this more, but I'd like to see more outreach to the students. They make up the largest portion of renters in this city. They have a lot of viewpoints that are missing. So I think that as part of city's regular outreach, they should do a public engagement on the diag, you know, and especially now when students need something to do that's able to be socially distant and safe. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Caller 439.
Hi there, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can, sir.
Excellent. This is Henry McConnell. I've called in a number of times this month regarding the issue of a masking order. And first, I want to applaud the council for their unanimous approval of a very bold order with gathering and masking, and for doing so in a peaceable manner. I greatly applaud you. This goes even beyond the bounds of what I had hoped we could achieve when I first started calling in earlier this month. However, I want to alert you and the greater public to the fact that this is, of course, just beginning with this new chapter of students returning. I particularly want to call attention to a grave embarrassment that is currently circulating on the internet. Ann Arbor has become an internet meme. At the time I'm speaking right now, nearly 75,000 upvotes have been registered for a photo taken in Ann Arbor recently on reddit.com depicting a house with unmasked partygoers densely congregating outside and deplorably a banner hanging behind them that says, and I quote, and I apologize for the language, quote, "You can't eat ass with a mask on," unquote. This is now circulating and is showing the horrible decision-making on the part of our newly arrived residents. So what I'd like to note here is that we have individuals who seem blithely indifferent to endangering the health of others and their greater community. And now that we have this masking and gathering order in place, I call on all of us to ensure that we can help peacefully enforce it, because there will be body bags on all of our hands if we don't work as a community to achieve that, to make common sense prevail, and that would be a massive shame. So thank you again to the council for taking bold action on this matter. And I'd just like to ask, now that we have this state of emergency in place, that we can be as nimble as is needed to ensure that we can tamp down the situation, because clearly it is off to a very poor start. And I'm just glad that we have the measures in place now where we can be more fierce in what we can do to bring it under control. So thank you so much. I yield my time.
Thank you.
Caller 924.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Taylor. I'm all for hiring Crawford, but I believe that the public should be granted more time to look at the candidates. If I believe someone is the best pick, and I do believe Crawford is the best pick, then I have no fear as to allowing more time to look into Crawford and to look sincerely at the others who want the job. If I believe someone is the best candidate, then why should I fear allowing more time to hear from the others? I'm actually puzzled by those of you who have hesitation at allowing the public more time, because that actually goes against your character of wanting more feedback from the public. Since when have you spoken strongly against more public feedback? That's very atypical behavior of you. Many of you have been strong advocates of public comments, and now you are going against that philosophy. May I remind Council that tonight's meeting occurred without the usual public comment or public hearings before a meeting, that would be typical for a normal Council session. I should also point out that I do not believe that this should be postponed until November. Why? An excellent candidate would be one with a demonstrated history of working with different types of city councils, and so there would be no need to wait until the new city council members. Give this a few weeks or a month, but no longer. Again, I support Crawford, but there is no reason as to why you shouldn't allow more time to look at the candidates. Thanks for listening to my concern, and have a good night. Just Kai.
Thank you. Thank you.
Caller 340.
Greetings, City Council and Mr. Mayor. Luis Vasquez from the First Ward. Just wanted to express my disappointment once again with this City Council meeting not having public input at the beginning of the meeting, where we could express our opinions about the process that you are engaging in. I'm disappointed in that. But also I'm very disappointed in the whole process. And I'm, from the get-go, from the firing of Howard Lazarus without cause, at the behest of an out-of-town attorney, who basically put some of you up to it. And also I'll just refer to a comment from Ann Bannister at the June 29th meeting, asking if the city really needed to even have a search, and could it instead just stick with our existing plan. And that just seems to me just suspect from the get-go, and doesn't lend towards transparency, as has been professed by many council members. I'm fine with Mr. Crawford. I think he's a wonderful CFO for the city, and can serve as an interim, and has done so with distinction. But yeah, I'm a fan of more public process. I want to hear more from all the other candidates, and I'm glad that decision was made tonight. So kudos for that. Thank you for your time, and I hope the best decisions are made for our city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caller 588.
Hi, council members. This is Peter Hauk. I'm a resident in Ward 4. And Councilmember Nelson, I'd like to address some of the things that you said tonight, because you really got them wrong. The first thing that you got wrong was the idea that the city administrator position is not an outward-facing position that people in the public interact with. And what I found going door to door for council candidates this summer was the exact opposite. People noticed how Howard was treated. They didn't approve of it, and they voted that way because of it. Okay, so you really have misunderstood that point. The other point that you've misunderstood is the idea that people like me, who sent you notes describing a desire to slow this process down a little bit. So what you're misunderstanding is that we're not being manipulated to do that. Instead, your bad behavior around Howard Lazarus and around the the plan that some council members have. This bad behavior is motivating us instead to be seeking out others in the community and leaders in the community who are willing to stand up and to do better. So you have both of those backwards. That's all that I have to comment on tonight. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Caller 677.
Hi, this is Michelle Hughes, and I'm glad that we have more time for public input on this. But I hope that it's not just more time that we have. I hope that we have some specific plans and ideas about how to like proactively engage certain communities and give them what they need in order to meaningfully engage with this. If it's just more time, you're going to get more emails from the people you always get more emails from. But I think this is a decision that involves a lot of people, and we should be going out of our way to engage people that aren't typically engaged. And we should be, proactively seeking out communities. We should be, giving them, I don't know, food or childcare, whatever they need in order to like meaningfully participate in some kind of like focus group type activity. I don't know if that's exactly what we need to do, but my point is we need to do something proactive to engage people that aren't typically engaged, because this is a decision that's going to affect everyone in the city for a long time. It's a big deal, and we need to treat it like a big deal, and we need to make sure that we have consensus, not just at the council table, but throughout the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anna Foster.
Hi, this is Anna Foster, Ward 5. I was gonna make a request for more time at the start of the meeting, but public comment happened at the end, as has been noted. But I do really appreciate the vote to extend more time to the community to weigh in on this and to allow staff to have more time to respond to the forums you've made available to them. I'm a fairly connected, or not connected, I'm fairly tuned in to council meetings and spend many a Monday night with this Zoom projected onto my living room TV. And I actually only was sort of keyed into watching the interviews and participating in the surveys by Michelle Hughes, the previous caller's tweets. And I know I'd seen stuff about it, but Councilmember Bannister pointed this out in a couple of the interviews. We don't have a local newspaper. And while pushing things out via email and Facebook might seem like it's hitting a lot of people, we're kind of getting a lot of information overload in the middle of a presidential election and a number of other things. And so even as a person who's fairly attentive to local politics, this nearly slipped through my cracks. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. Also, as Councilmember Ramlawi said, like, maybe he hasn't heard an organic uprising of community voices around this issue. But organic things, well, I guess that's not exclusively true. Many things just don't grow in the darkness. And I appreciate you giving more time to this issue so that things can grow and so that people can chime in just a little bit. And I apologize for not emailing about this last week. I didn't even know really that there was going to be a decision made today from those council, from those surveys. So thank you for extending our opportunities to engage with this process. I really, really deeply appreciate it and hope that you consider all the candidates evenly and without bias, as Griswold pointed out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Caller 684.
Yes, hi, this is Eric Sturgis calling from the First Ward. Just a couple things. First off, thank you to Amy Sell for all of her work on this. I noticed that 12 staff members gave their input. I was reading in the council minutes, and I found that interesting that only 12 gave their input. I think having broader input is good, but my question is, who are we reaching out to in the African American community to have input? Who are we reaching out to in the LGBTQ community? Are we truly reaching out to different communities to get this input? Because their input is critical as well as everyone else's. So I would really hope that we have a focus on making sure that we are truly getting everybody's input and not just the usual input. I would comment that the citizens panel and the staff all gave Mr. Crawford the highest and the highly recommended column, and so did council. And I think the citizens panel, which had 5 of the incoming council members, that carries a lot of weight with me. So I would hope that when we ask for the citizens' input, that we are reaching out to the communities that don't always get reached out to, and that we are allowing them to participate in this process. Lastly, I would also like to say that I want to thank everyone who interviewed. I was able to watch their 1 minute 7 question answers, as well as read their resume, as well as read their cover letter, which was all readily accessible online. And while we don't have a newspaper, most of us have the internet and the computer. And I was able to watch the interview. So there was quite a bit of information out there. And I also had this thing called Google that I was able to type in their name and get a little bit of more information about the candidates. I just thought I would let people know that that is a possibility as well. If they truly want more information, as one of the candidates was fired from their job, I think with cause or without cause, I can't remember, but just, there's information out there, and I would encourage people to look that up. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Caller 205.
Hey, this is Joe Spalding. I just have a couple quick things here. I want to thank Kathy Griswold for speaking up about equity in terms of the search for the city manager there, or administrator there. That's super important. And I did want to say, kind of at the 100,000 foot level, that I never would have gotten anywhere interested in Ann Arbor politics if some of my friends hadn't have, told me to take a look. And the reason that they told me to take a look was because of the situation involving Lazarus. So take that for what it is. When it comes to becoming world famous once again for being one of the universities, or being a city worth going to universities with a bunch of idiots partying without masks on and not taking coronavirus seriously, that's super, super awful. I don't quite think that we should force anybody in those homes to be evicted or to turn their power off, but I do think that they should be forced to sit through the entirety of Ann Arbor City Council meetings until 3 a.m., the ones that have the real grindy, awkward, and weird comments that come in on issues like land use. That's all I got to say. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Mayor, we do have one other caller on the line, but they do not have their hand up.
Caller 180, if you have not spoken to public comment and you wish to speak at public, you appear to be gone. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at public comment? Seeing no one, public comment is closed. We have communications today from council. Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to speak about a couple of these comments that have been made. I know Councilmember Bannister has made a comment that has raised eyebrows and not just in the community, but even here, members in this body. And I will say that a statement made by one council member does not represent this council. And so I know many members and folks have pointed back at that comment that was made back in June, and that was not representative of this body. So that's one council member, not the body of council. And so I'm just pushing back on that. I do want to make sure we have a thoughtful and considerate consideration for this important job. And as we went through this conversation tonight, at times heated, at the end of the day, we all recognize the importance of our decision and yielded to the concerns of our colleagues and the concerns in the community. And we voted 11-0 to allow this process to continue for 3 weeks. And so there's going to be people out there writing all sorts of narratives, you know, and I learned that when I started running for council, how important it was for me to write my own narrative and not have other people write my narrative for me. And so the bottom line is tonight we voted 11-0 in ways the community has asked, in the ways our colleagues have asked. So that is important. All the rhetoric and all this nonsense is just that in many ways. So to my constituent in the 5th Ward, Zach, I'm sorry, but if you sent me an email, I did not receive it. So I'm not sure what to say to the accusations that you had of my comments made earlier. But I will say that the copy and paste email has almost no effect when someone sends it. It's nice when you have an organic email coming from a constituent with their own words addressing an issue. And in my time on council, there's been a concerted effort by members of this body to send out a whistle to certain parts of the community to send us emails on certain topics. And it's the same email, it's the same copy and paste, word for word, put your name here and send. And to be honest with you, I think people, and I don't want to diminish the input that we get from residents, but if you want to make an impact on your council member, put it in your own words and send it to the council member in your ward. And that's going to have a much greater effect than just sending a copy and paste to all of council on a particular matter. That has almost no effect. And I would just, if we really want to get our say on matters and really have an impression on your elected official, then take the time and put it in your own words and send it to your own representative. And the copy and paste model has almost no effect. So I apologize. I don't want to diminish the importance of inclusivity and listening to all my constituents. But I will say the ones that put it in their own words have a much bigger impact on me, and I believe on others as well. So I appreciate everyone's time here, and I look forward to continuing this conversation and this decision-making process.
Councilmember Lum. Councilmember Lum, you are on mute.
My apologies, I thought I unmuted myself. Thank you. Thanks for waiting. I would just like to use this time to briefly make a recommendation to the Council Rules Committee and the future members of that Rules Committee to revisit the requirements that we used to always utilize for public speakers to when they state their names, to also provide their address. why do we have this rule? Because we, when it comes to public comment, for one, I think, we want to defer, understandably, to our local residents, the folks that we represent. This evening, again, Mr. Spalding from Oakland, California, took this time to weigh in and opine on. He touched on planning again. He makes various comments about council members I know he's never met. He started to watch, apparently, council meetings. He was a well-paid political consultant for some of the new members who will be joining council and their constituencies. He was well compensated, very well compensated, and cranked out lots of, negative social media products. And now he obviously has an interest and is engaged and has taken to commenting during our public comment opportunities. And again, I think that's his right, certainly. I just think, though, to be completely transparent, that it would be, I think it's an important rule that we used to abide by, and that is requiring our public speakers to state their name and their address. It's just added information and makes for a more transparent process, and I think that's always a good thing. Thank you.
Councilmember Griswold.
We've heard some comments tonight about the lack of public comment periods. And I want to remind the audience that Labor Day is Monday, September 7th. So our next regularly scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, September 8th, which will have a public comment component at the beginning of the meeting. In addition, caucus will be on Sunday, August 30th. And we're having it a week early so that we don't interfere with the Labor Day weekend and the fact that we're not having a meeting on Monday night. Secondly, the Mobility Committee, according to an email from staff, the first meeting will be Thursday, September 3rd at 4 p.m. And I will be bringing forward a draft resolution about public comment and civility. When I was on the school board, we worked on a comment, and I think that the council member bashing that occurs during public comment time, rather than talking about important policy issues, is totally inappropriate and sets the wrong tone. We are better than that, and we can rise to a level at least equal to the school board. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Because I see Miss Sell is still on, or her icon's still up here. I just wanted to encourage her to, I know she's going to do her best to get this project moving forward again, this decision. And I assume that that's going to also entail perhaps reopening the comments for not just staff, but for the public for a longer period of time. So I'm interested in that. I just wanted to say, I didn't know if that was mentioned fully, that I think we should do that. So just a couple things real quick. I want to thank Mr. Story for calling in, and I actually went back and listened to what I said about what was happening in California and turning off the water and power to these houses, and it was difficult to hear what I said. So my apologies for that, and we're working with IT, and I have a new system here, and it seems to be working better. So I thank you for saying that, and under normal circumstances, I might run into him downtown or something after a Monday meeting, and we'd have a nice talk. So I wish those days would come back soon. I had the pleasure of doing a small art installation job for a new tenant at Lurie Terrace today. And so I was in Lurie Terrace, and I'm just really happy with what we did there. I hope that everything continues to go smoothly there. And they're decent places. They're affordable for these folks. And she was thrilled to be able to find a place here and to learn that we have, as a body, and working with the Housing Commission and our supporters here in the community, are going to continue to have that operate as a decent place for seniors to find affordable housing. And it was very, very nice to be in there. And I hadn't been in there in many, many years, and kind of take a look around again and see what they're like. And that was a good purchase. We did a good thing there. I also wanted to share my condolences and sympathies to all the folks out in California, and all the emergency services people, and the smoke jumpers, and tree huggers, and environmentalists, and nature lovers and forest and water stewards. And I'm so sorry that California's burning right now. I can't even tell you how devastating it is to see this. I've been watching some drive-throughs, like the Hennessy fire up there in Napa Valley and so on. And it's really outrageous. And we really got to get it together as a planet. I'm not here. There's no progress without hope. I think we heard that lecture a couple years ago. And it's true, but man, it really seems hopeless sometimes when you see this footage. And I'm really distraught about that with the friends and family out there in California, and really for the trees and the community and the wildlife and everything. It's just tragic. And so my heart goes out to everybody out there. And then I just want to comment real quick on rules. Sometimes some of the worst things come out when our rules aren't followed. When we're speaking to or supposed to be speaking to a 2 or 3 down in amending a resolution, and instead we're accusing others and assuming assuming presumption of intent of our colleagues, and saying that we're acting foolishly, or that we're pretending, or that we have theories about things and not facts, and so on. And when this is allowed to go on under our rules, and we're not speaking to the notion and the motion before us, I think what happens is it gives free rein for people to argue. It gives free rein for people to insult, and it drags out our meetings, and we don't make good decisions. And so I would encourage us to stick to the rules, to speak to the matters before us when they're before us. And the truth of it is, I'm going to defend my colleague, C.M. Bannister. Councilwoman Grand asked us all to be truthful, and she was being truthful in what she's heard, that there are undercurrents of people want things one way or another, and to think that it's any other way is to be foolish about what happens here at City Council. I fully admit that I'm not a good politician, because what I see from politicians is smile and wave here, and then do something else over here. I see a lot of this going on in the community, a lot of pretending, a lot of pretense, and I'm not up for that, and obviously CM Bannister isn't either. And so she says what she wants to say, and I admire her for that. And as far as her remarks about sticking with the plan is we have a competent temporary acting city administrator, and I'm perfectly happy to extend even a temporary contract for him to go on while we search and make sure that we don't have the right person in place already. And so when she made those remarks, I don't think that's unusual at all. And I don't think there's any kind of scheming or planning going on around that. It doesn't bother me that she said that whatsoever. And so I don't have a problem with that. And so I'm happy to have served with her for these couple years, and I look forward to the next couple months. And I'm sorry she won't be sitting next to me again. Thank you.
Councilmember Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, Councilmember Hayner, I'm really glad that you got to go to Lori Terrace and see the real human impact of it. I remember after the renovation of Miller Manor, when we were all invited in to see the solar panels and eat lunch and dessert with the residents there. It was an incredible opportunity. And obviously, because of the pandemic, we need to postpone anything like that were it to ever be proper at Lori Terrace. But I'm glad that you got a dose of that. I will say it is a little frustrating to hear in one breath, like the comments that it's bad that we go in with assumptions of ill will or bad intent, that's the kind of negative conversation that comes out of discussions of amendments on amendments. And then at the same time, lend credibility to and give voice to accusations of us wanting a bad city administrator so that we can be corrupt. That feels like, saying one thing and doing another. So I'll also just say, I think there are, I don't know why, but there are a lot of theories right now going around about people pulling strings behind the scenes to get people to advocate for being allowed to give input about the city administrator search. And I just did a quick keyword search through our email inbox, and not I didn't read a single form email. I didn't read a single copy and paste. So I would encourage our colleagues to actually read emails from the residents and our constituents. And I think you'll find unique messages that express different sentiments and different motives from every single one of them.
Councilmember Smith.
In my close to 5 years on this body, I've worked very hard to maintain a civil tone and a working relationship with those who I disagree with politically. At no point have I, at this council table, knowingly thrown out a falsehood or an accusation of corruption. I've listened to 5 years of the narrative pushed by the majority that I am merely a puppet of the mayor. And part of your job as an elected official is to suffer the slings and arrows that comes with the job. I know it sucks, but you know, I've noticed a tremendously thin skin. I've noticed a tremendous interest in every single thing that is said about everyone on social media. I think we would all be better off if we try to come from a place of respect and kindness, which maybe not all of us are able to do. But I will tell you that I am enraged by Councilmember Bannister's accusations this evening. I have never, ever thought I would hear something like that at the table. And then to hear other falsehoods thrown out that Joe Spalding is some kind of paid local political consultant. I think, you know, have we gotten to a point where we can just say anything at this table and nobody's going to challenge the veracity of it? I have too much respect for this office, for this city, for government to behave that way. And I know that my residents that I represent in the 5th Ward feel the same way. I don't think I've ever been as disheartened as I have been this evening. I really hope that this is not what it's going to be like for the next 2 months, because it's not productive. It's not good for the city. It's not good for our staff, and we're better than this.
Further communication from council? Councilmember Lum?
Yes, I will provide Mr. Smith the verification about what I said about the previous caller that he just referenced.
Further communication? Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, second by Councilmember Smith. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.